there's nothing I can do better to help the people of New Hampshire than to explain money to them.
Right.
You're holding a melting ice cube in fiat, and it is a scam. The Fed and the Treasury are scamming you, and if there's one thing I know, it's money and how it works. And we've got to spread the word, and that's sort of what my run is about. And I think more broadly, that's what's going on in the country and the world right now. You have a lot of people who are saying, like, hey, we can reinvent the world the way we want. And what better group to do that than Bitcoiners?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Bitcoin is Hard. This is a Choice App production about Bitcoin and personal finance. I'm your host, Brian Harrington, and today we have Bruce Fenton with us, who's a longtime Bitcoiner and candidate for US Senate. And so I'm very excited to just talk to him about him running for Senate and being a longtime Bitcoiner, because I really, really believe that Bitcoiners have influence and have the ability to change the world. And so that's what I want to talk about today, Bruce, is just practically, what are you doing with the Senate run and how do you view Bitcoin as a solution? And so introduce yourself for people that are just living in New Hampshire or follow you on Twitter. Who is Bruce?
Sure. So I'm I came from the investment business, and I've been in Bitcoin for about 9 years. My background is in securities. That's kind of what I've done my whole life. My mom got me into that business as a child, really. And then I got my first job when I was 14, and then I got licensed when I was 19. So that's been 28 years that I've been SEC registered or licensed in some form. And then I got into Bitcoin 8 or 9 years ago. And like you said, Bitcoiners are changing the world. We tend to be kind of a tough bunch, because you go through a lot to be in Bitcoin. It's hard. There's a lot of ups and downs. And, people that sort of march to their own beat and break the rules and make their own rules. And that's sort of what my run is about. And I think, more broadly, that's what's going on in the country and the world right now. You have a lot of people who are saying, hey, we can reinvent the world the way we want. And, what better group to do that than Bitcoiners?
Right. And we have the ability to make the world a better place. Humans, we have that ability. And I think I was telling you, sometimes I get really frustrated with change candidates and reform candidates that they just pick their shot at running at very, very poor times. It's the ideas are not enough. We have to know how to mechanically, systematically move the better ideas forward in this world that is resistant to change. And so that's so rather than sitting today and your platform's awesome, platform's terrific, solving solutions is terrific. I just read your blog post about just path to victory. Start there and tell us, why you chose to run now, mechanically, and just talk to us about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that. I always had in the back of my mind, I'm interested in politics and public service, but I didn't think I would be running now at all. I have a lot to do with my business, and there's a lot going on in Bitcoin, very exciting. And I've got a great life, frankly. I mean, I'm really lucky. I've spent a lot of time and effort, and I've been very, very fortunate to be able to have a kind of the ultimate gig. I've got a cool work environment and a cool job, and I do what I want. And I really enjoy it. But there is an opportunity here because the differences between candidates and ideas are more stark than they've ever been before. We have two very different visions about where the world should be and what should unfold. And what has happened over the last 2 years, I'm not happy at all with the reaction to COVID and the tyranny and mask policies, injection policies, things like that. And I'm not happy at all with the economic policies. There was very, very significant. I mean, I think disastrous economic policies. We haven't even really had the full effect from all this reckless printing of new money. And we're just starting to see it with inflation, but this isn't the end of it. We even have geopolitical global instability because of it. So it's very, very significant. It's really serious times right now. And I think we're in kind of a fourth turning or an epoch shift where the whole world sort of changes. And then on top of that, you had just fate. I think, there was, event after event after event that seemed to lead me down this path. First of all, the popular governor decided not to run. Then not one, but two other former senators who were expected to run didn't run. So it ended up being this wide open field. I had a lot of friends who were trying to convince me to run back in January, and I just completely dismissed it. And I'm not just saying that like false modesty or something. Right. I really did not want to do it. But in looking at the way the world is and where politics are, I actually have a very, very good chance of winning. And I felt like, yeah, now is the time. I don't want to wait around for another 4 years or something. Now is the time to try and make change, because we can all make change in our world just by
Right.
being the change we want to see.
Right. And something I super agree with is correct. Like the timing is never convenient. The timing of being an activist, the timing of choosing to try to put a dent in something is never convenient, because people that are high performers and have things going on, you are always having opportunity costs about working on different things. And that's people have talked about. That's a reason why like we don't see more, kind of like private sector, like high performing individuals like quote unquote jumping into politics or whatever. But you're right with the but then when we see some do, sometimes they don't wait for the time when you're, like you said, the popular governor chooses not to run, the other kind of like leading next people up decide not to run, and creating these kind of open like opportunities. But at the same time also did you anticipate when you were involved in Bitcoin, like early as you were, did you anticipate your name ID rising the way that it has, like through that? Because that's the other thing also, is that you're in the right time at the right place, but you also already have a public persona. Like it very bothers me when people start to work on their email list and start to work on their name ID, inside a campaign season, because the election is, what's the day of the election? September something?
September 13th is the primary.
So September 13th, like we can't be talking about, I know I said, who is Bruce Fenton today? Because I'm asking like, we follow you on Twitter, we know the name, like tell us what you're all about, but we can't be saying like this name ID like thing that close to the election. You can't be trying to build your name ID and win an election at the same time. So that's another reason why you already have the building blocks in place of like having an online following and having people that believe in your ideas. That's something that, honestly, like not everyone has, and people need to understand like the importance of that. So did you think that you would have as much of a profile and influence as you do now when you got involved in Bitcoin, 9 years ago?
It's funny. When I started in Bitcoin, I really wanted to have a high profile, and I did all the speaking engagements. The first couple of years, I was doing tons of speaking, and at one point, Andreas was ranked number 1, and I was ranked number 10. But ironically, around 2016, my career changed, my life changed a little bit. I was fortunate enough to have done well in the space, and it became a little much, especially with all the ICO wave. I'd have 25 people pitching me something. So I actually went kind of underground. And so I went from taking every media request to taking 0. So there was a period of a couple of years where I just said no to every interview. I said no to every speaking engagement. And I kind of went low key, and my plan was to, go off in the sunset to my farm and, and just enjoy life. But I do still out, I still built a following. I didn't try and like actively promote myself, but I still had people, follow me. And I think that's one really great thing about that, is that even people who don't know me, it's really easy to do research on me. And you can go back. Somebody just sent me a clip from 13 years ago on YouTube. It was from 2009 or something like that, where I'm talking about bailouts and central banks and these kind of things. So I'm very, very consistent. There's things even 20 years old where I'm talking against war, against the drug war. These kind of things. So that gives me some sort of proof of work, street cred that you just can't duplicate. A lot of politicians, unfortunately, there's politicians jumping on the Bitcoin bandwagon right now, acting like they're Bitcoiners, and they'll say anything to get elected. But I believe what I believe. I've been kind of a Ron Paul type of Republican, or, libertarian really, for, many, many years, very, very consistently. People may like that or dislike it, but I think everybody would agree that I've been consistent. So that's helped. And it is kind of fun. There's benefits and drawbacks of being in the public eye. I tried real hard. For a long time, I wanted to be well known, and then I got a little taste of it. I said, I don't know if I want that. There's some drawbacks of it, and I went underground. But this is important enough that I'm willing to, kind of put myself out there. And there's some benefits of it too. It can help you in business, and being, it's a funny thing, being recognized and stuff. It's a double-edged sword. And some of the aspects of campaigning, I'm not super comfortable with. It's still in our space, we're all about cypherpunks and, decentralization. It's not about like me, look at me. And so, but that's part of campaigning. I've posted a few selfies in the last couple months. That's more selfies than I posted in the last 5 years, probably, but that's some of those things are expected in a campaign, I suppose.
Right. Something that just funny thing, like something I've been saying is when going to conferences and things like that, it feels like playing Bitcoin Twitter in real life. It's like, you want to talk about the metaverse, want to talk about the metaverse. Like, I feel like I'm in the metaverse right now. Like, I'm talking to Bruce Fenton. Like, Bruce Fenton that is the character, whether it's on Twitter or on a video podcast or at like a coffee meeting in New Hampshire. Like, that is what it is. And like you say, the consistent proof of work of Bruce Fenton on the internet for 20 years talking about positive ideas, like that, to me, that's my favorite thing about like online personas is like it does feel like playing a video game, and like and not in a bad way, like in a positive way of like we're traveling through life trying to like create alliances to make the world better. And like that's what that's what campaigning is. And the other thing that's great about this race is I hope what'll happen is you'll be a bellwether for like the influence that a Bitcoiner, does have, like how big or how influential is like that Bitcoin vote. Like, can you talk to us about that? Like New Hampshire, tell us about the free state movement and tell us about the relationship between libertarians and Republicans, because that's the other thing I've seen. I feel like New Hampshire does really well is the libertarians and Republicans do a great job of influencing each other. And that's something that I honestly would love to see happen across other states.
Yeah. So the Free State Movement is a group of people that came up with a pledge. I think it was almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that, that said 20,000 people are going to sign a pledge and they're going to agree, voluntary pledge, to move to New Hampshire and pursue the minimum amount of government being protection of life, liberty, and property. And so that tends to be obviously mostly libertarians, anarchists, and liberty Republicans, and some Democrats. I love the idea of liberty Democrats. I wish there was a lot more of them, because I think that our core values are the same. I think that I have a lot of great friends who are Democrats. They got good hearts. They care about the right things. We just disagree on the solutions. And boy, there's no shortage of libertarians who will tell you why we feel our solutions are better. We love to debate that more than anything else. And so, yeah, it's been a successful movement now. I signed the pledge 7 years ago or something like that, or 8 years ago. We made the move almost 6 years ago. And it's kind of taken off. There's now quite a few people in the state house, in the legislature that identify themselves as free staters, mostly Republicans. And so you have this strong liberty Republican movement. We have a strong libertarian movement, and a very, very strong activist movement. There's a small core group of people, and I can't take credit for being one of them. I'm certainly a member and a friend, but I'm not. I'm just haven't put in the hours that some of these activists have. Friends that I have, like my friend Carla, people like that who, they put in a lot of time. They do lawsuits and they do events, and they go to things again and again and again. I'm doing more of that as a campaigning thing, but there's a strong contingent. There's a lot of people, and that even a dozen of them, the dozen most forceful, they have an influence. There's a lot of politicians that fear the free staters. They say, oh boy, don't make you wear masks. Those free staters will come and they'll cause trouble. And yeah, they will. So it's very exciting, and it's made a difference. And some of the laws, they've made a difference in terms of, there's no vax pass. There's no injection mandate. Schools can't ask. Things like that. A lot of gun rights and different things that have been pushed through by this legislator. So yeah, it's very exciting, and they picked New Hampshire because it's sort of the perfect state for it.
Yeah. And what's the adoption rate about Bitcoin, or just the overall vibe about Bitcoin throughout the free state movement?
It's pretty good. Eric Voorhees, Roger Ver, and Charlie Shrem came up and spoke at the Pork Fest, the Free State kind of festival back in 2012. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of people that listened, and there's people who threw a couple $100 worth of Bitcoin in that back then and held it, and now they're rich. Mm-hmm. So there is a very strong base. There's a lot of liberty people that have moved because of that, so there's a huge overlap. And I think it's fascinating. One of the things that psychs me the most about the run, the day that I ran, and pretty much every day since then, the day that I announced, somebody's asked me about Bitcoin. And it's what's really funny is they don't say my name. They just like, I'll be on the street. They're like, hey, what do you think of Bitcoin? Right. Which is great. I'm glad that people associate, I want to be associated with Bitcoin. I'm proud of Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. And So it's really exciting. A lot of people care. Young people, college students, I mean, are really interested. I have a lot of college students. It's sort of a secret weapon for the campaign. There's a lot of college students are on the left, and some of them, they don't even care about my politics. They're going to support me because they care about Bitcoin. And if they have an opportunity, they're volunteering and stuff like that. Yeah.
Bitcoin is the new shorthand for just fix it, change it.
It's a cool brand. It's a cool brand. And, even people who disagree with my politics, they're volunteering and helping out. They want to come and meet me because I'm a Bitcoiner. It's not about me. It's not like, oh, this guy, I really want to talk to this guy. It's like, he's Bitcoiner. I want to hear what the Bitcoiner has to say. So I think that's a great victory right there.
Right. So what then, when you think about Bitcoin in the United, so we talked a little bit before we recorded just more about the mechanics of securities and trading tokenized securities and kind of how the technology with which securities are traded is old. And then, how do we upgrade the systems of this world? Upgrading the systems of this world is very old. Like, what is the path for Bitcoin in the United States? Like, when you think about it, just moving into the future, when you think about the United States moving into the future, how do we get the systems of the United States upgraded? And off of that, if that's too long, like, how do us as humans, I'm going to start using Bitcoin as my base money right now before the tax laws change. Like, I'm just going to start doing it because like the software is going to be written that allows me to use Bitcoin in my checking account and hook up to the ACH network, and like Choice app, like puts Bitcoin in your retirement account. Like it's almost like software is already routing around the bureaucracy. So it's like, in one way, like what you're doing is positive, and like we want Bitcoin advocates in the Senate, and like I believe in voting, and like I'm happy to participate, and I'm happy to like root for a positive outcome. But at the same time, like life is too good. Life is too good to sit around and keep using old systems. Like, I called my bank, I called Ally Bank, and I said, hey, you're a great bank. You're decent, like you have live chat, like there's just one issue. Like, the currency software that you're running sucks, like absolutely sucks, and it's not good for my family. Like, do you have anything on the roadmap to like fix this? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I have to switch apps then. Like, I'm sorry, So I don't know. Take both of those. Like, how do we upgrade the systems of this world, and what can us as people do while they're being upgraded?
I think you hit the nail on the head by the framing of your question, which is, what do people do? That's a great question. And people can buy Bitcoin and just do it. You can be the change in the world that you want to see. A lot of people view it as a big victory, like, oh, we're going to get the government to adopt Bitcoin. I don't really care about governments adopting Bitcoin. I mean, it's great if some central bank wants to buy it. Yeah, whatever. It's another hodler. But I would much rather, if I could advise a president or a king or somebody who's a ruler or leader of a country, and I have a magic wand, I can have an hour to advise them on anything. I wouldn't say, hey, have your central bank buy it. I'd say get rid of the central bank, to encourage your people to buy it. And you don't even need a politician to do that. You and I can do that right now. We can tell people, like, hey, you know what? Just skip the whole system, do your own thing. It's kind of like the separation of church and state. You can have the separation of money and state. People can just go and start their stack. But if you don't own Bitcoin, go buy $10 worth. If you own some more, buy some more. And then that inevitably leads to the, these other kind of things, fixing the banking, fixing your apps, fixing securities, fixing everything else. If more and more people own Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin, particularly if it continues to do well, that's going to make more change. I wouldn't like to see the United States have a bunch of Bitcoin on its balance sheet. I'd like to see the United States collectively as individuals have a bunch of Bitcoin. And that's a lot easier to do with a couple 100 million people, 250 million people. It's a lot easier to accumulate $1 trillion in Bitcoin than it is to have one central group do it. So I think that's exactly the right track. We just keep adopting, and we can be the change. We can write the world the way that we want it. We can write the future.
Yeah, no, and that's almost one of the best parts about being elected, is like having the ability to like go on TV and say that. Like, that's what's so funny about the best, like, and that's what's so interesting in this country, is that almost like media personalities and podcasters and television hosts are almost as powerful like as Congress people, because they have the ability to like change public opinion, and having more people with microphones and with the bully pulpit of influence saying things like that, like don't, like, you go buy Bitcoin, like you go buy Bitcoin, and having, you know, with no caveats, and just saying like,
Right.
this is positive, us doing, I love the idea of, I've said this a few times, like having homeowners associations like own Bitcoin, having cities own Bitcoin, like having, and that's what's so awesome, is that getting 3 of 5 in any city, or 3 of 5 on any HOA, and just like talking about the benefits of Bitcoin, and talking like, yeah, I think that could be really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's you know, it's super important to be talking about, you know, talking about these things. And as a candidate, you know, I think I'm probably one of the only candidates who's talking in a way that, you know, I'm just not like a fan of the US dollar. And I don't think that's unpatriotic. I mean, the classic wisdom, and probably, especially if a couple of years ago, I would have been running and talked to some consultant, they would have said, oh, don't
Right.
say that. You got to be firm on the dollar. It's the
Right.
flag and the dollar and the Pledge of Allegiance. And it's, no, it's not. The dollar is a scam, and it's bad, and it's not anti-American to say that. It's the truth.
Right.
And we shouldn't be buying a scam. The most American thing to do would be to forget that that scammy currency and move on to something better. The
Right.
Bitcoin is way better money. It's way
Right.
better money, and I don't think there's anything more American or more patriotic than telling people to, but you know, opt into a better system, because it's going to happen whether we want to or not. It's here to stay, and it's going, you know, the toothpaste out of the tube. Bitcoin is here to stay. And I think the trend that we've seen over the last 10 years with Bitcoin is going to continue. And I believe in hyper Bitcoinization and the monetization of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin standard. So, you know, it's unconventional, but I think, yeah, you're right. You do need more people talking about these kind of things for sure.
And that's because that's what you said at the bottom of one of your blog posts, which was what the, like, many people and organizations are still operating under rules built for a world that is now gone. Like,
Yeah.
like saying we have to be honest with ourselves about the dollar, like, as you just were, like, we have to be, this has nothing to do with like, yes, okay, thank you for like the political advice of the, you know, we can't say that or whatever in the past, like, hey, totally understand, actually super understand where you're coming from. However, that world does not exist. Like,
Exactly.
I'm letting you know, like the same way I did with Ally Bank on the phone, I'm letting you know, like, better software already exists and people are moving on to start using it. That's happening. Like, hyper Bitcoinization is happening right now in real time. I'm here, and like you're saying, you're like, my name is Bruce Fenton. I'm here to help you as a leader move towards this. If you will have me, let's do it. Like, and I love your responses. I love your responses to your opponent too, when they say, you know, please send more money, like the Bruce is running. And you're like, look, let's just do it without money. Let's just cut that out and just do it on the ideas. Like, that's a classic, great response.
Yeah.
And the establishment knows what will happen if they agree to that.
Yeah, they're afraid of it because they're operating under these old rules, and all their consultants and advertisers and experts are operating in a world that's gone now. And it is gone, and it changes. And it's interesting what you said about being a leader, because, you know, I goof off and everything like a lot of other people, and I didn't really think about, you know, getting into politics, but just the fact that I'm running, you know, it does change my mindset a little bit. I've got to be a little bit more serious, and I've got to think like, okay, I am running for a position where I would be one of the leaders in this country during what I'm afraid is going to be quite a time of turmoil. I think we may have war, we may have all kinds of other, you know, really serious things going on. And I pride myself on being the kind of person who wants to help people when there's a big storm or you know, something dangerous or something going on. I'm right at the front. You know, when I was panicked when I first heard about the virus, I thought we were all going to die, and I was right at the front. I was prepping. I wasn't advocating for lockdowns, but I was prepping, you know, for fear, thinking like, oh, this could be really, really dangerous. And there's nothing I can do better to help the people of New Hampshire than to explain money to them. Right. You're holding a melting ice cube in fiat, and it is a scam. The Fed and the Treasury are scamming you, and you got. And I believe if there's one thing I know, it's money and how it works. And you know, we've got to spread the word, and that's the best thing I can do to help people. And when you're, is, you know, looking.
And when you're elected, and when you're elected to the Senate, then the people of New Hampshire will be more prepared for the future now. Like, that's just it. Like the people of New Hampshire will be in a better position to go through like the fourth turning, as we're saying. Like, the world is changing, but you don't have to be afraid of that. You can choose to make positive decisions and like do that. And we can choose to have leaders with influence that understand the times we're living in and understand how to make positive decisions. And that's going to trickle, like, it'll be obvious that you live in New Hampshire because you will be less panicked than people that live in other states that have leaders that don't understand what's happening. Like, that's great. Like, that's good. That's good for New Hampshire. And that's good for America.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd like to get that word out. I mean, I feel like I can help people because it's all about helping people. It's about helping the country. I really want to serve. I want to serve a higher power and do good things. And there's nothing that I can do as a politician if I'm elected. There's nothing I can do that's more important than Bitcoin. You know, there's nothing that I can do. Bitcoin can be the change. All I can do is maybe help Bitcoin. And also I can help stop tyrants from trying to stop Bitcoin, you know, so somebody like Elizabeth Warren doesn't come in and try and make Bitcoin a felony, or whoever knows what other crazy thing they would try, you know, but all I can do is kind of foster that and educate people and be there and be there to help. But Bitcoin is a thing that can really help humanity. And it sounds too lofty sometimes to say that, but you have to think of it in the contrast of how evil fiat is. You know, fiat causes actual death, actual millions of deaths. It is a horribly evil system. It's not just bad. It's not just a scam. It's actually evil, where people die and they go to prison and stuff that they wouldn't have without the fiat system. And so an alternative to that is a very high calling, and something that I think it's the most important thing I can do as a person and as a candidate. It's the most important thing that anybody can do to further freedom and what's right in our world.
Right. Something came to mind when you talked about kind of like goofing off like political leaders, like like Nayib Bukele, like came to mind. Like, what do you think of, or just like being willing to kind of be a person like on the internet?
Yeah.
What do you think of just kind of his like leadership style, and like how do you think it's going like in El Salvador?
I think his leadership style is great. You know, I think there's a new generation of, you know, kind of the Joe Rogan. I mean, Trump had a lot of drawbacks and was certainly very polarizing and hated by a lot of people, but he did sort of he was himself, and he did these long speeches and things like that. And I see that kind of a trend with a lot of these things, you know, with the way that media works and podcasts and, you know, folks like Joe Rogan versus CNN. He now has more viewers than CNN. And Bukele and other people, you know, there's other candidates, Blake Masters and other people that I think are moving more towards this way. You know, the kind of Nancy Pelosi model, I think, is an older model, and I don't think it appeals to people, particularly Gen Z, you know, the younger people. So yeah, it was a very hard decision to make to run, but one of the things that I decided, the only way I could do it was if I did it myself. You know, I have to be myself, because it's a big burden to run. It's a big burden if you win. It's a big burden if I get sent down there. I couldn't also be a phony in addition to that. I just don't have the energy or the time or the interest. I have to be me. And if I go out there and say, I'm me, take it how I am, you're not going to like everything I say. I say a lot of stuff, so nobody's going to agree with everything. But at least you know that I'm genuine and where I come from and what I'm about and who I am. And if you like me, vote for me. If you don't, you don't. And I'm super cool with that. And it's very refreshing to me. I actually feel bad for most candidates because you know, they got 10 meetings a day with people telling them what to say and what to wear and all this stuff. There's just zero chance that I would do that. And it's not some lofty, great thing. You know, it's just who I am as a person. I just couldn't, you know, be energized and happy, because you got to be happy with what you're doing. You got to enjoy. Your last day could be tomorrow, and so you got to enjoy. You know, enjoy what you're doing, and I'm loving it so far, because I'm just being myself. And if people like what I say, then great. If they don't, then I'm not the candidate for them. That's cool.
No, look, and from the outside, like it's honestly a joy to watch, and it is refreshing to hear, and it's exciting again to watch what Bitcoin can do, like as a brand, like as you said, and be that like positive change for the world. So Bruce, wrap us up on, hit the numbers again. I watched your video on just path to victory and like why like the primary is wide open and how the numbers actually stack up and how you've already been endorsed by the leading libertarian of last election. Like hit us with that stuff and then wrap up with just your campaign site and everything for everyone.
Yeah. So it's a very winnable election. You know, there's two steps. You got to win the primary and then you got to win the general. So the primary, there's a new candidate just came in now. So it's a 5-way primary, whoever gets the most of that. So it's not a ton of votes that you need. There's typically only 150,000 people. So depending on how those votes get split, you could win that with as little as 30,000, 40,000, certainly 70,000 votes would take it. So that's a very, very doable thing. I view my campaign like a startup that's job is to get 70,000 customers, and a customer is somebody who votes for you in the primary. So it's typically Republicans, but independents can vote as well. It's the GOP primary. That's very, very winnable. I've gotten in just a couple of weeks, I've gotten some name recognition. I've gotten some press. People love my message. I'm the most kind of against the tyranny. I'm the most against COVID policies. I'm the most against the economic policies of any of those candidates. So that's been resonating a lot because Republican primary voters are very upset with the Democrats. I mean, more than they've ever been before. They are not happy with my opponent Hassan, and they're not happy with Joe Biden. So that brings us to the general. I mean, once I win the primary, if I'm fortunate enough to win the primary, you go on to the general, and it's almost even better there because, she's a very, very unpopular Democrat. There's a lot of, she's ranked, top 10 seats most likely to flip. There's a lot of people who are upset. There's a lot of gym owners and business owners and people who've had their businesses shut down, their kids forced to wear masks. They're serious, and they're going to turn out. We're going to have a red wave in November. So that's kind of the name of the game. Bruce Fenton is my website. Easy to find, Bruce Fenton. But that's the big thing: getting people in New Hampshire to take a look at that website and just give me 10 minutes. I'm willing to give 6 years if people can give me 10 minutes. And again, it's not like I'm trying to convince people so much to vote for me. I just want them to know what I stand for, because I believe that the majority of people believe what I believe. Yeah. There's people who like the masks and they're happy with what happened with the last couple of years, but I believe that America's going to right itself, and we're going to set this right, and that there's going to be a majority of people who agree with me. So, if I get the word out, I'll win, and I'll be the next senator from New Hampshire.
Love it. Bruce, thanks so much for the time today. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Awesome. Have a good one.
Hey, Bitcoin is Hard listeners. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. This has been a Choice App production about Bitcoin and personal finance. And just want to let you know, none of this is investment advice or an endorsement. It's just an interesting conversation with a Bitcoin guy who just happens to be running for the US Senate. This is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.